Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters, and welcome back to the Islamic SHAHADA channel. Behind the secular face of the Philippines, a quiet yet unstoppable spiritual wave continues to unfold. Islam, once seen as concentrated only in the southern provinces of Mindanao, is now increasingly visible in different corners of the nation. From the centuries-old mosques in Cotabato and Marawi to the newly established prayer halls in Metro Manila, the story of Filipinos embracing Islam is becoming more frequent and more compelling. These are not isolated conversions, but part of a broader phenomenon reshaping the country's religious and cultural landscape. According to the official 2020 census, approximately 7 million Filipinos, about 6.5% of the national population, identify as Muslim. This makes Islam the second largest religion in the Philippines after Christianity. The majority of these Muslims are concentrated in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, better known as BARMM, where over 90% of the local population follows Islam. This region, encompassing provinces such as Lanao del Sur, Maguindanao, Basilan, Sulu, and Tawi-Tawi, has long been the historical and cultural heartland of Philippine Islam. While Muslims remain a minority at the national level, their influence and visibility are undeniably growing. Over the past decade, the establishment of BARMM has provided a political framework that allows Muslim Filipinos to govern their own affairs, preserve their cultural heritage, and implement aspects of Islamic law in matters of personal and family life. This autonomy has strengthened the identity of Muslims in the South and fostered greater recognition of Islam across the nation. By 2024 and 2025, BARM has shown clear progress in governance, education, and infrastructure development, despite challenges of poverty and post-conflict rebuilding. The region has become a symbol of resilience and an anchor of Islamic presence in the Philippines. Beyond Mindanao, Muslim communities are steadily expanding in major cities such as Manila, Cebu, and Davao. These communities include long-established Muslim traders, students from Mindanao, overseas Filipino workers returning from the Middle East, and an increasing number of converts to Islam. In Metro Manila alone, dozens of mosques, prayer halls, and Islamic centers have been established to serve both local Muslims and new members of the faith. Halal restaurants, Islamic schools, and cultural organizations are becoming part of the urban landscape, marking Islam's gradual integration into mainstream Filipino society. Recent years, particularly 2024 and 2025, have highlighted how Islam is not only a religion of the past, but also a dynamic force shaping the country's future. The growing Balik-Islam movement, in which Filipinos from Christian backgrounds embrace Islam, demonstrates a renewed spiritual curiosity and openness among the population. Interfaith dialogue initiatives have gained momentum, reflecting the desire of both Muslims and Christians to build bridges of understanding. At the same time, younger generations of Muslims are becoming more active in politics, business, digital media, and education, ensuring that their perspectives contribute to national progress. This evolving presence has also aligned with global trends. The Philippine government has increasingly recognized the importance of the halal economy, positioning the country to benefit from the rising demand for halal food, tourism, and finance. As a result, Muslim entrepreneurs and communities are finding new opportunities to thrive. Internationally, the Philippines is presenting itself as a nation where Islam and Christianity coexist despite historical tensions, and where religious diversity is seen as part of national strength. The story of Islam in the Philippines stretches back more than 6 centuries, making it one of the oldest faith traditions in the archipelago. Islam first arrived in the 14th century through trade and missionary activity carried out by merchants and scholars from Arabia, India, and Southeast Asia. These early Muslims brought not only goods such as spices, textiles, and ceramics, but also religious teachings that resonated with the local populations. By the late 14th and early 15th centuries, Islam had established itself firmly in the southern islands, particularly Sulu and Mindanao, where it began to shape the political, cultural, and social structures of the region. The rise of the sultanates of Sulu and Maguindanao marked a turning point in Philippine history. These Islamic kingdoms became powerful centers of governance and spirituality, with the sultans serving both as political rulers and as protectors of the faith. The Sultanate of Sulu extended its influence as far as Palawan and parts of Sabah in present-day Malaysia, while the Sultanate of Maguindanao consolidated power across Mindanao. Sharia-inspired governance, Islamic education, and cultural exchange flourished, creating sophisticated societies that were deeply connected to the broader Muslim world. Islam was not a fringe element. It was a dominant and unifying force in the southern Philippines, with influence that reached into trade, law, and daily life. This trajectory was dramatically altered in the 16th century with the arrival of Spanish colonizers led by Ferdinand Magellan in 1521. Spain's conquest introduced Catholicism, which became the state religion under centuries of colonial rule. Luzon and the Visayas were gradually converted into Catholic strongholds through missionary activity, forced conversions, and integration of the church into governance. The southern Philippines, however, resisted. The Moros, as the Spanish called the Muslim communities, engaged in centuries of resistance against both Spanish and later American colonization. This history of defiance preserved Islam's presence in Mindanao and Sulu, even as Catholicism took root across the rest of the country. The dual identity of the Philippines was born in this era, a predominantly Catholic nation shaped by colonial influence, yet with deeply rooted Muslim communities whose traditions predated European arrival. This unique religious landscape remains evident today. Islam endured not because it was tolerated by colonial powers, but because communities in the South defended their sovereignty, their land, and their faith against waves of external domination. The resilience of the Moro people ensured that Islam would survive into the modern era as a vital part of Philippine identity. By 2025, this historical footprint continues to shape national conversations about culture, governance, and identity. The existence of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao is a direct legacy of the centuries-old Islamic sultanates, adapted to the realities of a modern democratic state. At the same time, the growing number of Balik-Islam converts in Luzon and Visayas shows that Islam is not only a relic of the past, but also a living faith that continues to inspire Filipinos today. The story of Islam in the Philippines is, therefore, not just about survival. It is about continuity, adaptation, and revival. In contemporary Philippines, one of the most fascinating religious trends is the rise of the Balik-Islam phenomenon. The term Balik-Islam, literally meaning return to Islam, is unique to the Philippines and reflects the historical narrative that Islam had already been established in the islands long before the arrival of Spanish colonialism in the 16th century. While globally the phrase conversion to Islam is more common, in the Filipino context it carries the sense of a spiritual return, a recognition that Islam was once the dominant faith in parts of the archipelago, particularly Mindanao and the Sulu archipelago. The growth of Balik-Islam communities has become more visible in the 21st century. Studies suggest that thousands of Filipinos each year are embracing Islam, though no central government registry keeps official records of conversions. Academic research and surveys from Islamic organizations in Manila, Cebu, and Davao indicate that this movement is not isolated to Mindanao, but has spread to urban centers across the country. By 2025, the presence of Balik-Islam communities in Luzon and Visayas has created new forms of religious pluralism, showing that Islam is no longer confined to its historical heartlands. The reasons behind these conversions are diverse and deeply personal. For many overseas Filipino workers, particularly those employed in Gulf countries such as Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, exposure to Islamic culture and values has sparked genuine interest and led to their embrace of the faith. Marriage also plays a significant role, as interfaith unions often introduce non-Muslims to Islamic practices and teachings. Beyond social factors, however, there is a spiritual dimension. Some Filipinos seek refuge in Islam as an answer to disillusionment with corruption, inequality, or the moral shortcomings they perceive in Philippine society. For them, Islam offers structure, discipline, and a profound sense of peace. Despite the lack of precise statistics, the impact of Balik-Islam is visible in everyday life. Islamic centers and mosques in major cities now host classes, outreach programs, and community events tailored to new Muslims. Organizations like the Balik-Islam movement and the National Commission on Muslim Filipinos provide guidance, religious education, and support systems to help converts navigate their new identity. This institutional support ensures that Balik-Islam is not merely an individual act of faith, but a growing collective experience that reshapes the religious landscape of the Philippines. In the age of digital connectivity, the Balik-Islam phenomenon has also found momentum online. Social media platforms host countless testimonials from Filipinos who share their conversion journeys, often highlighting how reading the Quran or engaging with Muslim colleagues inspired them to reflect on their spiritual path. These narratives resonate with a wider audience, reinforcing the idea that Islam is both a historical legacy and a modern choice for Filipinos in 2025. Several powerful factors are contributing to the rising visibility and influence of Islam in the Philippines today. The first factor is the rapid growth of the halal economy. In recent years, the Philippine government has recognized the potential of halal certification and Muslim-friendly tourism as both an economic strategy and a cultural bridge. By 2025, halal-certified restaurants, Muslim-friendly hotels, and prayer facilities have become increasingly common in major cities. Initiatives such as Marhaba Barakai, a tourism program designed to welcome Muslim travelers from Southeast Asia and the Middle East, highlight how the Philippines is positioning itself as a halal-friendly destination. This development not only supports the Muslim minority population, but also integrates Islamic values into the country's broader economic vision. The second factor is migration and overseas work. Millions of Filipinos work in Gulf countries such as Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar, where exposure to Islamic culture and daily practices often leaves a lasting impact. Many Filipinos return home with a stronger appreciation of Islam, and some embrace the faith themselves. This migratory experience has created a steady stream of Balik-Islam converts who bring back not just remittances, but also a renewed spiritual identity. The social ripple effect is significant. Families and communities in the Philippines become more familiar with Islamic values, thereby reducing prejudice and increasing interreligious dialogue. The third factor is political autonomy through the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, BARMM. Established in 2019 and steadily consolidating governance structures through 2024 and 2025, BRMM represents a turning point for the Muslim population. For the first time in modern history, Filipino Muslims enjoy meaningful self-rule, enabling them to prioritize Islamic education, cultural preservation, and local governance according to their traditions. This political recognition has not only improved peace and stability in Mindanao, but also revived a collective sense of pride and identity among Filipino Muslims nationwide. The success of BRMM strengthens the visibility of Islam as an integral part of the Philippine nation, not just a regional minority voice. The fourth and final factor is the rise of contemporary Islamic outreach through digital media. Social media platforms such as Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok are increasingly populated by young Filipino Muslims who who share their perspectives in accessible and engaging ways. From Quran recitation videos and Islamic lectures in Tagalog and English, to personal testimonies of Balik-Islam converts, these digital efforts break down stereotypes and present Islam as a relatable, modern way of life. This trend resonates especially with the youth, who are accustomed to consuming content online and who seek spiritual guidance in formats that feel natural to them. As a result, Islam's message is no longer confined to mosques and madrasas. It now travels across screens, creating virtual communities that transcend geography. Together, these four drivers, the halal economy, overseas migration, political autonomy, and digital dawah, form the backbone of Islam's continued growth in the Philippines. They reveal how faith is intertwined with economics, politics, migration, and technology in shaping the modern religious landscape. By 2025, these dynamics demonstrate that Islam in the Philippines is not static or marginalized, but actively evolving in response to global trends and local aspirations. Behind statistics, policies, and national debates, there are deeply personal stories that reveal why Islam continues to grow in the Philippines. These narratives show that the rise of Islam is not the product of coercion or political maneuvering, but of genuine spiritual journeys rooted in personal reflection, migration, education, and family life. One such story comes from a former overseas Filipino worker who spent years in Riyadh. While working in Saudi Arabia, he was exposed daily to Islamic practices such as prayer, fasting during Ramadan, and the sense of community built around the mosque. Intrigued, he began to study the Quran in English and found resonance with its teachings. When he returned to his hometown in the Visayas, he came back not only as a breadwinner, but as a Muslim. In 2024, he started a small study circle, what locals call a pengajian, where neighbors and family members meet weekly to learn about Islam and share meals together. His story reflects how labor migration, long seen only as an economic lifeline, has also become a spiritual bridge bringing Islam to regions far beyond Mindanao. Another story unfolds in the capital city of Manila, where a young university student discovered Islam not through direct contact with Muslims but through history. While researching the history of the Sultanate of Sulu for an academic paper, he realized that Islam was once a thriving force in Philippine politics and culture before the Spanish conquest. This realization sparked curiosity, leading him to read Islamic literature and engage in discussions with Muslim peers on campus. By 2025, he had embraced Islam and now leads interfaith dialogue groups where he encourages open conversations about faith, spirituality, and identity. His story highlights the role of education and historical awareness in shaping modern conversions. In Mindanao, a homemaker offers another perspective. She had lived all her life surrounded by Islamic culture but never considered herself deeply religious. After years of personal struggles, she began to observe the daily prayers more consistently, encouraged by friends in her community. Over time, she says she found peace and stability in the rhythm of Islamic worship, particularly in the discipline of Salah. For her, Islam was not just a set of rituals, but a way to find serenity in a world filled with hardship. Her testimony resonates with many Filipino women who see in Islam a source of inner strength and spiritual grounding. When viewed together, these stories form a recognizable pattern. Islam in the Philippines is not spreading through compulsion or external pressure, but through individual choices driven by meaning, identity, and the search for peace. Each story, whether of a returning migrant worker, an inquisitive student, or a devoted homemaker, underscores a central theme. Islam in the Philippines grows through personal conviction, not force. By 2025, these human experiences have become just as important as demographic charts and political agreements in understanding the future of Islam in the country. They remind the world that behind every conversion and every community stands an individual journey, often filled with struggle, curiosity, and the pursuit of truth. Together, they illustrate that Islam in the Philippines is not simply surviving, it is thriving through the lived experiences of its people. The growth of Islam in the Philippines is not without its challenges. While the country has made strides toward peace and recognition of Muslim identity, deep-rooted issues continue to shape the experience of Filipino Muslims. One of the most pressing concerns is the ongoing decommissioning of armed groups in the South. Although the Bangsamoro peace process has achieved historic milestones since the establishment of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, BARMM, in 2019, the demobilization of combatants from groups such as the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, MILF, has proven to be a slow and delicate process. By 2025, progress has been made, yet lingering pockets of tension and mistrust remain. Communities often struggle to transition from decades of conflict to sustainable peace, raising fears that unresolved grievances could reignite instability. Economic inequality presents another major challenge. The Bangsamoro region remains among the poorest areas in the Philippines, despite its newfound autonomy. Studies from 2024 indicate that poverty incidence in BARMM is still significantly higher than the national average, with many families living below the poverty line. Limited access to healthcare, education, and job opportunities continues to hinder the region's development. This economic disparity not only impacts daily life, but also fuels frustration and disillusionment, particularly among the youth, who often find themselves vulnerable to radical narratives or forced migration in search of better prospects. At the same time, issues of identity and representation add another layer of controversy. There are ongoing debates between government agencies and Muslim organizations regarding the true number of Muslims in the Philippines. While the 2020 census estimated around 7 million Muslims, about 6.5% of the national population, Muslim groups argue that the figure is underreported, insisting that the actual population could be much higher. This discrepancy is not merely statistical. It reflects deeper sensitivities about recognition, representation, and political influence. For many Filipino Muslims, the undercounting of their community reinforces feelings of marginalization within the broader national narrative. Social perceptions also remain a hurdle. Despite progress in interfaith dialogue, stereotypes and discrimination against Muslims persist in some sectors of Philippine society, particularly in urban areas where Islam is less understood. Muslim Filipinos frequently report being profiled in airports, facing barriers in employment, or being portrayed unfairly in media. Such experiences highlight the long road ahead in building genuine inclusivity and respect for diversity across the archipelago. Despite the challenges, the cultural influence of Islam in the Philippines has become increasingly visible, reshaping both local communities and the country's global image. By 2025, Islam is no longer confined to religious spaces such as mosques or madrasas. It has woven itself into the fabric of Philippine society, affecting food, fashion, tourism, and even national branding. One of the most noticeable areas is the rise of halal dining and lifestyle choices. Halal-certified restaurants are now widespread, not only in Muslim-majority areas of Mindanao, but also in major cities like Manila, Cebu, and Davao. This shift is driven not only by the local Muslim population, but also by an expanding market of non-Muslim Filipinos, who view halal food as a symbol of cleanliness, quality, and ethical preparation. In urban centers, halal food festivals and fairs have begun attracting diverse crowds, signaling that halal consumption has moved beyond religious obligation to become a lifestyle trend embraced by a broader public. Alongside this culinary change is the growing popularity of the halal lifestyle, which extends to cosmetics, fashion, and wellness products. Filipino entrepreneurs are increasingly tapping into the halal economy, creating businesses that cater to both domestic consumers and the global Muslim market. This economic activity reflects a cultural openness where Islamic values are not seen as foreign but as part of a shared identity that contributes to national development. Tourism is another sphere where Islam's cultural impact has left a mark. With government-backed initiatives like Marhaba Boracay and Muslim-friendly zones in Palawan and Cebu, the Philippines is positioning itself as a destination for Muslim travelers from neighboring countries such as Malaysia, Indonesia, and Brunei, as well as from the Middle East. This Muslim-friendly tourism strategy not only boosts the economy, but also projects an image of inclusivity and hospitality on the world stage. It challenges stereotypes that often portray the Philippines solely as a Catholic-majority nation by showcasing its Islamic heritage and openness to diversity. On a societal level, the growing presence of Islam has encouraged greater interfaith awareness and dialogue. Educational institutions, civil society groups, and interfaith councils have increased programs that promote cultural understanding between Muslims and Christians. This effort has led to more inclusive cultural festivals, media representations, and even school curricula that acknowledge the historical role of Islam in shaping the nation. By 2025, these initiatives are slowly breaking down barriers of misunderstanding, particularly among the younger generation, who are more exposed to diversity both offline and online. A central question often asked both within the Philippines and abroad is this: are large numbers of Filipinos converting to Islam? The answer is nuanced. Yes, there is a visible and consistent trend of conversions, often referred to locally as the Balik-Islam movement. But these changes are not yet occurring at a scale that dramatically shifts national statistics overnight. Instead, the growth of Islam in the Philippines is shaped by a combination of demographic, cultural, and social forces that together create a meaningful and steady impact. The first and most significant driver of growth is the high birth rate within Muslim communities, particularly in Mindanao and the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, BARMM. Studies up to 2025 indicate that Muslim families in these areas continue to have larger households compared to the national average, making natural population increase the primary source of Islam's expansion in the country. This organic growth ensures that Islam remains not only demographically resilient, but also generationally sustainable. The second driver is the increasing visibility of Islam through the halal economy, migration, and political autonomy. As halal-certified food outlets, Muslim-friendly tourism zones, and businesses targeting global Muslim consumers become more mainstream, Islam's presence is being normalized in everyday life. Likewise, millions of overseas Filipino workers who have lived and worked in the Gulf region return home with exposure to Islamic practices, and some bring back a new spiritual identity as Muslims. Meanwhile, the political successes of BRMM provide a sense of legitimacy and pride for Filipino Muslims, making Islam more visible in national discussions. Yet perhaps the most compelling factor lies at the personal level of conversion stories. Every year, new Filipinos embrace Islam after encounters with Muslim communities, interfaith marriages, academic studies of Philippine history, or personal spiritual journeys. These stories rarely make national headlines, but collectively, they create small yet resilient networks of new Muslims across the country. From prayer groups in the Visayas to university students in Manila exploring Islam's intellectual heritage, to families in Mindanao finding renewed devotion, these individual experiences form part of a growing mosaic of Islam in the Philippines. Looking ahead to 2025 and beyond, the future of Islam in the Philippines rests on two interconnected pillars: political stability and social integration. The establishment of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, BRMM, was a historic milestone, but its long-term success depends on governance, peace building, and economic development. If BRMM can deliver on its promises, improving infrastructure, reducing poverty, and ensuring security, then the region will stand as a living example of how Islamic identity and Filipino national unity can coexist harmoniously. The second factor is the rise of the halal economy. From food and tourism to finance and fashion, the Philippines is beginning to tap into a global market worth trillions of dollars. If managed strategically, the halal sector can empower Muslim communities economically while also projecting an image of inclusivity to the international stage. Manila, Cebu, and Davao are already seeing halal-certified restaurants and Muslim-friendly facilities that not only serve domestic needs but also attract visitors from Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Middle East. At the cultural level, the growth of Islam in the Philippines will also depend on education and interfaith dialogue. Universities are beginning to include more content about Islamic history, and student organizations are fostering discussions that bridge the gap between Muslims and non-Muslims. This gradual normalization of Islam within the national narrative helps weaken stereotypes and encourages peaceful coexistence. However, the road is not without challenges. Political instability, poverty in Bangsamoro, and occasional tensions between religious groups can still hinder progress. Yet the momentum is real. With a young and growing Muslim population, greater international engagement, and a renewed focus on identity and spirituality, Islam in the Philippines is positioned not only to endure, but to thrive. Islam in the Philippines today is ultimately a story of continuity and resilience. From the arrival of Muslim traders and the rise of sultanates in the 14th century, through centuries of Spanish colonization, to the present-day revival often referred to as the Balik-Islam movement, Islam has never disappeared from the Filipino soul. It has adapted, resisted, and endured. In recent years, more Filipinos are discovering Islam not through compulsion, but through personal journeys, returning to an identity deeply connected to the nation's heritage. For some, it is a rediscovery of ancestral faith. For others, it is a conscious choice inspired by spiritual fulfillment, intellectual exploration, or exposure to global Muslim communities. Whatever the path, the pattern remains the same. Islam in the Philippines is not merely a relic of history, but a living, breathing force. As we look forward, this presence is more than symbolic. It is shaping culture, economics, and politics through halal industries, interfaith dialogue, and the consolidation of the Bangsamoro region. Islam is no longer confined to the margins, but is part of the national mosaic, contributing to the broader identity of the Filipino people. In essence, Islam in the Philippines is not just part of the past. It is the rhythm of today's life and perhaps a guiding direction for the nation's future. Thanks for watching until the end. I hope it was useful. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.